Sorry about that.
That's okay. So 2 weeks ago, I was wondering what my topic would be, and Spirit said I should talk about Spiritualist Principle Six. And I said, but I did that before. And they said, yes, and we want you to do it again because somebody needs to hear it. So I gave this like 2.5, 3 years ago, and I tweaked it a little, but if you don't remember, here's a reminder, and this is for somebody new. I would like to talk to you all today about Spiritualist Principle Six. We believe that the highest morality is contained in the Golden Rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Now, in social psychology, this is known as the Reciprocity Principle. It says that in many social situations, we pay back what we received from others. The earliest known statement of this maxim of reciprocity reflected the ancient Egyptian goddess Mayet, and it dates to 2000 BCE. They said of her, "Now this is the command, do to the doer to make him do." The next example of the Golden Rule is in the Code of Hammurabi in late 1700 BCE. That's where the phrase "an eye for an eye" comes from. Now that is expressing the Golden Rule in its prohibitive or negative form, which is also a common principle in ancient Greek philosophy. Examples of that general concept include, Thales said, "Avoid doing what you would blame others for doing." Sextus the Pythagorean said, what do you not want to happen to you, do not do it yourself either. And Socrates, we've all heard of him, said, do not do unto others that which angers you when they do it to you. These examples are all from 600 BCE to 400 BCE. Now, a common way of expressing the negative Golden Rule is, don't dish it out if you can't take it. The Golden Rule has shown up throughout recorded history in more than 20 religions. My last count was 26. In the New Testament, Matthew 7:12, Jesus said, do to others what you want them to do to you. This is the meaning of the law and Moses and the teachings of the prophets. Jesus' teaching goes beyond the negative formulation of not doing what would not like done to them. It is transformed into the positive formulation of actively doing good to another. If the situations were reversed, one would desire that the other would do good for them. This formulation, as indicated in the parable of the Good Samaritan, emphasizes the need for positive action that brings benefit to another, not simply restraining oneself from negative activities that could hurt another. So here is the parable of the Good Samaritan from Luke 10:25-37, New International Version. On one occasion, an expert in the law stood up to test Jesus. Teacher, he asked, what must I do to inherit eternal life? Jesus replied, what is written in the law? How do you read it? The expert in the law answered, love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength and with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. You have answered correctly, Jesus replied. Do this and you will live. But the expert in the law wanted to justify himself, so he asked Jesus, and who is my neighbor? In reply, Jesus said, man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho when he was attacked by robbers. They stripped him of his clothes, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. A priest happened to be going down the same road, and when he saw the man, he passed by on the other side of the street. So too, a Levite, when he came to the place and saw the man, passed by on the other side of the street. But a Samaritan, as he traveled, came where the man was, and when he saw him, he took pity on him. He went to him and bandaged his wounds, pouring on oil and wine to clean them. Then he put the man on his own donkey, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. The next day he took out 2 denarii and gave them to the innkeeper. Look after him, he said, and when I return, I will reimburse you for any extra expenses you may have. Jesus asked the expert, which of these 3 do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of the robber? The expert in the law replied, the one who had mercy on him. Jesus then told him, go and do likewise. Even humanists, otherwise known as atheists, subscribe to the golden rule. In the view of Greg M. Epstein, a humanist chaplain at Harvard University, do unto others is a concept that essentially no religion misses entirely, but none of these versions actually requires a God. Marie McLaughlin, in her book, Think Humanism, said, trying to live according to the golden rule means trying to empathize with other people, including those who may be very different from us. Empathy is at the root of kindness, compassion, understanding, and respect, qualities that we all appreciate being shown, whoever we are, whatever we think, and wherever we come from. And although it isn't possible to know what it really feels like to be a different person or live in different circumstances and have different life experiences, it isn't difficult for most of us to imagine what would cause us suffering and to try to avoid causing suffering to others. For this reason, many people find the golden rule's corollary, do not treat people in a way you would not wish to be treated yourself, more pragmatic. Again, that's the negative version, and I personally subscribe to Jesus's more positive version. So now I have listed off philosophers, prophets, and leaders of all faiths and philosophies advocating the golden rule. Yet why is such a simple rule so hard to follow? One reason offered by many critics is that it is not realistic. The German philosopher Immanuel Kant criticizes the golden rule as not being flexible enough in various situations. Kant explains that a prisoner would appeal to a judge asking him not to sentence him to prison. If the golden rule applied, the prisoner claims, the judge would not want to send the prisoner to prison, as the judge would not the same verdict to be done to himself, thus proving that the golden rules should not be practiced as such due to the fact that the position of the judge varies from that of the prisoner. However, Kant is wrong. It's not often I get to tell a philosopher of great fame that he's wrong, but the judge would point out to the prisoner that if the judge had broken the law, the judge would want justice upheld and to be tried in a court of law because the judge believes in justice and the rule of law. That's why he's in that occupation anyway. He would want to be treated that way, and so he would therefore treat the prisoner that way. Now, whether you are an employee or a boss, you need to practice the golden rule. If you were a manager and you were told by your boss to fire a few employees, if you agreed with the reasonings for termination, you would fire them in a way that you would want to be fired. In other words, you would not want to be fired in public, being yelled at or ridiculed. You would want to be fired in private, in a professional and caring manner. Now, if you didn't agree with the reasons for their firing, you'd have a different ethical dilemma on your hands. George Bernard Shaw, he's not my relative as far as I know, wrote a different criticism. Do not do unto others as you would that they should do unto you, because their tastes may be different than yours. This suggests that if your values are not shared with others, the way you want to be treated would not be the way they want to be treated. The counter to Mr. Shaw's criticism is that you need to take into account your neighbor's tastes, because if the roles were reversed, you would want him to take your tastes into account. So just because you like mustard on your French fries, like all sane people, doesn't mean that your neighbor would want mustard because they're insane. Or at least that's my perspective. Ketchup. Ugh. Anyway, the philosopher Ian King echoed this criticism of the Golden Rule, saying, "To do unto others is dangerous in the wrong hands because since some fanatics have no aversion to death, the Golden Rule might inspire them to kill others in suicide missions." And to counter Mr. King's criticism, again, I get to counteract a philosopher, I ask you to look at the Golden Rule in this way. Using the negative form, if you don't want to get killed by a suicide bomber, don't be a suicide bomber. Duh. Transitioning out of that concept is a little challenging, so I'll just bring us back to everyday life. The next time you go shopping or driving on the road, remember the Golden Rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Be kind to those less fortunate than you, as if you were in their place and you would want others to be kind to you. When I used to take my 91-year-old father-in-law to appointment stores and restaurants, I often noticed that people held the door for him. At those times, I would say out loud, "Thank you." And I would say to myself, this person's practicing the Golden Rule. On the other occasions, when people would push their way past us, shoving him out of the way to get to the door first, sometimes I would say out loud, "Excuse you." And I would always say to myself, if you get to his age, you will regret all the negative karma that you have created. And when you drive in the streets, be sympathetic and patient with other drivers as you would want others to be with you. I have to say this one is hard for me because I sometimes honk at people driving on the road going 25 to 30 miles an hour over the speed limit. That's not safe for any reason. When I make mistakes or bad decisions on the road, I have to accept the honks that come my way because I'd be a hypocrite otherwise. So in any situation you may face, always think to yourself with an honest heart, how would you feel if the actions you are taking would be taken upon you? Remember to love, live, and forgive as you would want to be loved, lived with, and forgiven. Thank you for your time, and thank you for your attention.